It was late afternoon when Ethan Carson finished his patrol around the perimeter of the small military base in Virginia. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the dry grass that stretched beyond the chain-link fence. As a member of the Navy SEALs, Ethan had grown used to routine patrols like this one. Most days were uneventful, just walking along the fence line, checking for anything unusual. But today felt different. Ethan adjusted the strap of his rifle as he scanned the area ahead of him. That's when he saw it, a figure moving slowly along the outside of the fence. At first glance, it looked like an older man, maybe in his 70s or 80s, dressed in worn-out clothes that seemed decades out of style. He carried a wooden cane with a curved handle, using it to steady himself as he walked. Something about the way the man moved caught Ethan's attention. Despite his age, there was a certain grace to his steps, almost as if he knew exactly where he was going. Curious, Ethan stopped and watched the man for a moment. When the stranger turned, slightly toward him, sunlight hit his exposed forearm, revealing a faded tattoo. It wasn't just any tattoo. It was a design unlike anything Ethan had ever seen before. The symbol looked like a mix between ancient runes and intricate futuristic lines. For a second, Ethan froze, his mind racing. He recognized it immediately. This was no ordinary mark. It was something classified, something tied to Project Aegis, a rumored black ops program thought to have been shut down decades ago. His heart began to beat faster. What was an elderly man doing with a tattoo linked to such secrecy? And why did he seem so calm, as though he belonged here? Shaking off his initial shock, Ethan decided to approach him. He stepped closer to the fence, calling out in a firm but respectful tone. "Sir, can I help you?" Ethan asked. The man stopped walking and turned to face him fully. His eyes were sharp and piercing, belying his apparent frailty. Up close, Ethan could see deep wrinkles etched into the man's dark skin, evidence of a life lived through hardship and experience. The man studied Ethan for a moment before speaking. "I'm just passing through," he said, his voice steady and measured. "No need to worry." Ethan frowned slightly. "You're on restricted property, sir. Are you lost?" The man chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Lost? No, son. I know exactly where I am." He paused, glancing around as if taking in the surroundings. "This place, it brings back memories." Memories. Ethan wondered what kind of memories an elderly civilian could have of a military base. Still, he pressed on. "Do you mind telling me your name, sir?" The man hesitated briefly before answering. "Isaiah Johnson. And you are?" "Ethan Carson." Ethan replied automatically. "I'm part of the security detail here." "Well, Mr. Carson," Isaiah said, leaning slightly on his cane, "it seems we've both got jobs to do. But don't worry, I won't be staying long." Despite Isaiah's reassurances, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this man than met the eye. The tattoo on his arm alone was enough to raise suspicions. Add to that the cryptic comments and the unnerving calmness, and Ethan knew he couldn't let this go unchecked. "Mr. Johnson," Ethan said carefully, "would you mind coming inside the base with me, just to make sure everything's okay?" Isaiah raised an eyebrow, clearly amused by the request. "Am I under arrest, son?" "No, sir," Ethan replied quickly. "But it's protocol. We need to verify who you are and why you're here." For a moment, Isaiah simply stared at him as if weighing his options. Then, with a slight nod, he agreed. "All right, Mr. Carson. Lead the way." As they walked together toward the entrance of the base, Ethan kept glancing at Isaiah's tattoo. It gnawed at him, the questions swirling in his mind. Who was this man, really? How did he end up with a mark tied to a top-secret program? And most importantly, what did he want? Once inside, Ethan led Isaiah to a small holding area where visitors were usually processed. He radioed his commanding officer, Lieutenant Harper, to inform her of the situation. While waiting for her response, Ethan tried making casual conversation, with Isaiah hoping to learn more. "So, Mr. Johnson," Ethan began, "you said this place brings back memories. Did you serve in the military?" Isaiah smiled faintly as if reminiscing. "Yes, I served. Long time ago. Back when things were simpler. Which branch? Ethan probed. The Army, Isaiah replied without hesitation. Fought in World War II. Ethan nodded, though something still didn't sit right. If Isaiah had served in the Army during Wobai, surely there would be records of him somewhere, yet the tattoo suggested involvement in something far more recent and far more secretive. Before Ethan could ask another question, Lieutenant Harper arrived. She was a tall woman with short blonde hair and a no-nonsense demeanor. After listening to Ethan's report, she turned her attention to Isaiah. "Mr. Johnson," she said, her tone polite but firm. "Can you tell me why you're here?" Isaiah leaned back in his chair, seemingly unfazed by the scrutiny. "Just taking a walk. Ma'am, didn't mean to cause any trouble." Harper crossed her arms. "You understand that being on a military base without clearance is a serious offense, right?" "I do," Isaiah acknowledged. "But I assure you, I mean no harm." Harper glanced at Ethan, then back at Isaiah. "We'll need to verify your identity. Do you have any ID on you?" Isaiah shook his head. "Afraid not. Lost most of my belongings years ago." Harper sighed, clearly frustrated. "All right. We'll run your name through the system and see what comes up. In the meantime, you'll stay here." As Harper left, to begin the verification process, Ethan remained behind to keep an eye on Isaiah. The old man didn't seem concerned in the least. Instead, he sat quietly, his gaze fixed on some distant point beyond the walls of the room. Ethan found himself staring at Isaiah again, unable to ignore the nagging sense that this man was hiding something big. Whatever it was, Ethan was determined to uncover the truth, even if it meant digging deeper than he'd ever imagined. After Lieutenant Harper left the holding area, Ethan stayed behind to watch over Isaiah Johnson. Despite the old man's calm demeanor, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something about him was off. He kept glancing at the tattoo on Isaiah's arm, the strange symbol that had triggered so many questions in his mind. Who was this man? And why did he have a mark tied to Project Aegis, a program supposedly disbanded years ago? It didn't take long for Harper to return, her face showing signs of frustration. "There's no record of him," she said bluntly, addressing Ethan. "No enlistment papers, no discharge records, nothing. It's like he doesn't exist." Ethan frowned. "That's impossible. He claims he served in World War II. There should be something." Harper crossed her arms. "Exactly. Which makes me think we're dealing with either a liar or someone who knows how to cover their tracks really well." She glanced toward Isaiah, who sat quietly, observing the exchange. Without saying a word, "What now?" Ethan asked. "For now, we keep him here until we figure out what's going on," Harper replied. Turning to leave, she added, "And Carson, don't let your guard down around him. Something about this whole situation feels wrong." Once Harper was gone, Ethan turned his attention back to Isaiah. The elderly man seemed unfazed by the lack of records, almost as if he'd expected it. His piercing gaze met Ethan's, and for a moment Ethan felt like Isaiah could see right through him. "Looks like you've got quite the mystery on your hands," Isaiah said with a faint smile. "We'll get to the bottom of it," Ethan replied, firmly. "One way or another." Later that evening, after Isaiah had been moved to a more secure location within the base, Ethan decided to dig deeper. He knew there had to be answers somewhere. He just needed help finding them. That's when he thought of Clara Bennett, a civilian historian contracted by the Navy to research war artifacts. Clara had a reputation for uncovering hidden truths, and Ethan hoped she might be able to shed some light on Isaiah's mysterious tattoo. He found Clara in her small office, surrounded by stacks of books and folders. Her desk was cluttered with notes and photographs, evidence of her meticulous work. When Ethan knocked on the doorframe, she looked up, surprised to see him. "Ethan, what brings you here?" she asked, pushing a strand of brown hair out of her face. "I need your help," Ethan said, stepping inside. "It's about a man we picked up earlier today. He says he served in World War II, but there's no record of him anywhere. And then there's this..." He pulled out his phone and showed her a photo of Isaiah's tattoo. Clara leaned forward, her eyes widening as she studied the image. "Where did you say you found this?" "On the man's arm," Ethan explained. "Do you recognize it?" Clara hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I might. Let me show you something." She reached for a folder on her desk and opened it, revealing black and white photos of similar symbols etched into stone ruins. These were discovered in Antarctica during the 1940s. They're part of what some people call the Antarctic anomaly. Supposedly, they're connected to theories about extraterrestrial contact. Ethan stared at the photos, his stomach tightening. "Extraterrestrial? You mean aliens?" Clara shrugged. "That's what some researchers believe. Others think it's just ancient human craftsmanship. But the designs match what you showed me. Those same combinations of runes and futuristic lines." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. Could Isaiah somehow be connected to these ruins? Was that even possible? He voiced his concerns to Clara, explaining the circumstances surrounding Isaiah's appearance near the base. "This guy sounds like trouble," Clara said thoughtfully, "but also fascinating. If he really does know something about those symbols, we can't ignore it. Whatever secrets he's hiding could be important, not just for history, but maybe for our future too." Determined to learn more, Ethan convinced Clara to join him in questioning Isaiah again. Together, they made their way to the secure room where Isaiah was being held. When they entered, Isaiah greeted them with a knowing smile as if he'd been expecting them. "Back already?" he said, his tone light but tinged with amusement. "We want to understand what's going on," Ethan said, sitting down across from him. Clara took a seat beside Ethan, placing the folder of photos on the table. Isaiah glanced at the folder, his expression unreadable. "You've done your homework, I see." "These symbols," Clara began, pointing to the photos. "They were found in Antarctica. Do you know anything about them?" Isaiah leaned back in his chair, his gaze steady. "Maybe I do, maybe I don't. Why should I tell you?" "Because we're trying to figure out who you are," Ethan interjected. "And why you have a tattoo linked to something classified." Isaiah sighed softly as if weighing his options. Finally, he spoke. "All right, I'll give you a piece of the puzzle. Those symbols aren't just random carvings. They're instructions, blueprints, if you will, for technology far beyond what humans are capable of creating. Technology that doesn't belong to us." Ethan and Clara exchanged a glance. "What kind of technology?" Ethan pressed. "The kind that changes everything," Isaiah replied cryptically. "Weapons, energy sources, tools for manipulating time and space, things that could save humanity or destroy it." Clara leaned closer, her curiosity piqued. "How do you know all this?" Isaiah smiled faintly. "Let's just say I've seen things most people wouldn't believe, and I've paid the price for it." The room fell silent as Ethan and Clara processed his words. Could Isaiah really be telling the truth? Or was he spinning an elaborate story to throw them off track? Before they could ask more questions, Isaiah shifted in his seat, wincing slightly as if in pain. He reached for his cane, which lay propped against the wall nearby, and tapped it gently against the floor. "Enough for now," he said. "You'll have to decide whether to trust me or not. But remember this. The answers you seek come with risks you may not be ready to face." With that, Isaiah fell silent, refusing to say another word. Frustrated yet intrigued, Ethan and Clara left the room, their minds racing with possibilities. Back in Clara's office, they discussed what to do next. "We need proof," Ethan said. "Something concrete to confirm his story." Clara nodded. "Agreed, but how? We can't exactly ask him to hand over evidence." Ethan thought for a moment. "What if we search his belongings? Maybe he's carrying something that'll give us a clue." Clara hesitated, unsure if searching Isaiah's things would be ethical or legal. But before she could voice her concerns, Ethan was already heading toward the holding room. Reluctantly, she followed. Inside, Isaiah watched as Ethan approached cautiously. Looking for something? Isaiah asked, his tone amused. We need to check your cane, Ethan said bluntly. For security reasons. Isaiah chuckled softly. Go ahead, but don't say I didn't warn you. Ethan carefully examined the cane, running his fingers along its surface. At first it seemed ordinary, a simple wooden walking stick with a curved handle. But then he noticed a small seam near the base. Pressing gently, he revealed a hidden compartment containing a metallic object engraved with the same rune-like symbol as the tattoo. Ethan's breath caught in his throat. He handed the object to Clara, who inspected it closely. This is incredible, she whispered. It looks like some kind of artifact. As they stood there, staring at the mysterious object, Isaiah spoke again. That's just the beginning, he said quietly. The real question is, are you prepared for what comes next? Neither Ethan nor Clara had an answer. But one thing was clear. They were now entangled in a mystery far bigger than either of them had anticipated. Ethan stared at the glowing artifact nestled in Isaiah's palm, its faint blue light pulsing rhythmically like a heartbeat. It was small enough to fit in one hand, but radiated an energy that made the hairs on Ethan's arms stand up. Clara leaned closer, her eyes wide with awe and disbelief. Neither of them had ever seen anything like it before. What is this? Ethan asked, breaking the silence. His voice sounded steadier than he felt. Isaiah didn't answer right away. Instead, he studied the object as if lost in thought, his wrinkled fingers tracing the engraved runes etched into its surface. Finally, he spoke, his tone calm but heavy with meaning. This, he said, is a key to understanding things most people aren't meant to understand. Clara frowned, leaning back slightly. Things like what? Aliens? Advanced technology? Both, Isaiah replied simply. And more. Ethan exchanged a glance with Clara. This conversation was veering into territory neither of them had prepared for. They weren't scientists or conspiracy theorists. They were just trying to uncover the truth about Isaiah. But now, faced with this strange artifact and his cryptic explanations, it seemed the truth might be far bigger and stranger than they'd imagined. You keep talking about things and understanding, Ethan said, frustration creeping into his voice. Can you be specific? What exactly are we dealing with here? Isaiah sighed, as if weighing how much to reveal. All right, he began. Let me tell you a story. A true story, though I doubt anyone would believe it if they heard it secondhand. He paused, collecting his thoughts. Back in 1947, I was part of a team sent on a secret mission called Operation Horizon. Our goal was to investigate unusual ruins discovered in Antarctica, ruins that looked like they'd been built by something not human. Ethan's brow furrowed. You're saying aliens built those ruins? I'm saying we didn't know who or what built them, Isaiah corrected. All we knew was that the designs matched the symbols you've seen, and inside those ruins were artifacts like this one. He gestured toward the glowing object. Artifacts capable of doing things no human technology could replicate. Clara interrupted, her curiosity getting the better of her. Like, what? What do these artifacts do? They manipulate reality, Isaiah said bluntly. Time, space, matter, it's all connected. These artifacts allow whoever wields them to bend those connections, to reshape the world around them. The room fell silent as Ethan and Clara absorbed his words. It sounded impossible, like something out of a science fiction novel. Yet the artifact in Isaiah's hand seemed to hum with potential, as if confirming every word he said. But why send soldiers to retrieve them? Ethan asked. Why not send scientists or engineers? Because whatever created those artifacts wasn't friendly, Isaiah explained. When we entered the ruins, we encountered beings. Beings that didn't look human and didn't think like humans. They saw us as pests, curious nuisances wandering into their domain. Most of my team died trying to escape. Only I made it out alive. Clara shuddered visibly. What happened to the others? They were taken, Isaiah said grimly. Some killed instantly. Others experimented on. Whatever those beings wanted, they weren't interested in peaceful coexistence. Despite himself, Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. And this artifact? Where did it come from? It was among the items we recovered before everything went wrong, Isaiah replied. I kept it hidden because I knew it was dangerous. Not just because of what it can do, but because of what it represents. What does it represent? Clara pressed. The attention of forces beyond our control, Isaiah said. Forces that may still be watching us even now. Ethan shook his head, struggling to process everything. If all this is true, why didn't you report it? Why hide it for so long? Because humanity wasn't ready, Isaiah said firmly, and maybe still isn't. Imagine what would happen if governments got their hands on this kind of power. Wars fought over scraps of alien tech, nations tearing each other apart to claim dominance. Is that really what you want? His question hung in the air, unanswered. Ethan glanced at Clara, who looked equally conflicted. As much as they wanted answers, they couldn't deny the dangers Isaiah described. If the artifact truly held the power to reshape reality, it could change the course of history for better or worse. So, what do we do now? Ethan asked finally. Destroy it? Lock it away somewhere no one will find it? Isaiah shook his head. Destroying it won't stop what's coming. And locking it away only delays the inevitable. Sooner or later, someone else will stumble upon another artifact, or worse, the beings themselves will return. The beings? Clara echoed nervously. Are you saying they're still out there? Oh yes, Isaiah said quietly. They're waiting, watching, learning. When the time is right, they'll come back. And when they do, humanity will have to decide whether to fight or surrender. The weight of Isaiah's words settled over the room like a thick fog. For a moment, no one spoke. The artifact continued to glow softly, its rhythmic pulse almost hypnotic. We need proof, Ethan said suddenly, breaking the silence. Something tangible to show this isn't just a wild story. Isaiah nodded. Fair enough, but remember, proving my story means opening doors that can't be closed. Are you sure you're ready for that? Ethan hesitated. On one hand, he wanted nothing more than to expose the truth and protect humanity from whatever threats Isaiah described. On the other hand, he couldn't ignore the risks involved. If Isaiah was telling the truth, revealing the artifact's existence could put countless lives in danger, including their own. Before Ethan could respond, the door to the room burst open. Lieutenant Harper stormed in, followed by 2 armed guards. Her expression was grim, her eyes narrowing as she took in the scene. The glowing artifact, Isaiah's calm demeanor, and Ethan and Clara's shocked faces. What the hell is going on here? Harper demanded, her gaze fixed on the artifact in Isaiah's hand. Ethan stood quickly, stepping between Harper and Isaiah. Ma'am, let me explain. No. Harper cut him off sharply. You've gone too far, Carson. Bringing civilians into this? Handling classified materials without authorization? Do you have any idea what you've done? It's not what you think, Ethan insisted. This artifact, I don't care what it is, Harper snapped. It's evidence of a breach in protocol, and that makes it my responsibility. Guards, confiscate it. The 2 guards moved forward, their rifles raised. Isaiah remained seated, unfazed by the sudden tension. As one of the guards reached for the artifact, Isaiah tightened his grip on it. I wouldn't do that if I were you, he warned calmly. Harper stepped closer, her voice icy. Hand it over, Mr. Johnson. Now. For a moment, it seemed like Isaiah might refuse. Then, with a resigned sigh, he placed the artifact on the table. Very well, he said. But mark my words, you're playing with fire. Harper ignored him, signaling for the guards to take the artifact. Once it was secured in a reinforced case, she turned her attention back to Ethan and Clara. You 2 are confined to quarters until further notice, she declared. As for Mr. Johnson, he's being transferred to a higher authority. Higher authority? Ethan repeated, alarmed. Who? That's none of your concern, Harper said curtly. Now move. As the guards escorted Isaiah out of the room, Ethan caught one last glimpse of the old man. Isaiah met his gaze, his expression unreadable but somehow reassuring. Whatever happened next, Ethan knew one thing for certain. They were only scratching the surface of a mystery that spanned decades and possibly worlds. The air in the hangar was thick with tension as Lieutenant Harper glared at Ethan, her voice sharp and commanding. "Stand down, Carson," she barked, her hand hovering near the holster of her sidearm. Around her, armed soldiers fanned out, their rifles trained on Ethan, Clara, and Isaiah. The situation had escalated faster than anyone could have anticipated. Ethan stood his ground, positioning himself between Harper's team and Isaiah. His heart pounded in his chest, but he forced himself to remain calm. "Ma'am, you don't understand what's at stake here," he said, his tone firm yet respectful. "This isn't just some piece of evidence, it's dangerous." "I don't care how dangerous it is," Harper shot back. "You've overstepped your authority, and now you're interfering with orders from above. Hand over the artifact, or we'll take it by force." Isaiah, still holding the glowing object, stepped forward slightly. His presence seemed to command attention despite the weapons pointed at him. "Lieutenant," he said calmly, "if you try to take this artifact, you'll regret it. Trust me when I say it's safer with me." Harper's eyes narrowed. "Safer? You think I'm going to believe the word of a civilian who won't even explain himself properly? Stand aside, Mr. Johnson, or we'll remove you." Clara, standing, slightly behind Ethan, gripped his arm tightly. Her face was pale, her voice barely above a whisper. "Ethan, maybe we should do what she says. This isn't worth getting killed over." Ethan glanced at her, torn between fear and determination. He knew Harper wasn't bluffing. She'd follow through on her threat if pushed too far. But something deep inside told him they couldn't let the artifact fall into the wrong hands. Not after everything Isaiah had revealed. "No," Ethan said quietly but firmly. Turning back to Harper, he added, "If you take this thing, you'll be putting everyone at risk. Please, just listen to us." Harper didn't respond immediately. Instead, she exchanged a quick glance with one of the soldiers, a tall man with a stern expression who seemed to be her second in command. Whatever silent communication passed between them only heightened the sense of impending conflict. "Last chance, Carson," Harper warned. "Step aside or we act." Time seemed to slow as Ethan weighed his options. He couldn't fight his way out, not against so many armed soldiers, and running wasn't an option either. They were surrounded, but giving up wasn't acceptable either. There had to be another way. Before he could make a decision, Isaiah spoke again, his voice steady and commanding. "Lieutenant Harper, consider this. If you take the artifact, you'll be responsible for whatever happens next. Do you really want that burden on your shoulders?" Harper hesitated, her confidence wavering slightly. For all her bravado, it was clear she didn't fully understand the implications of the artifact or Isaiah's warnings. She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could speak, a low hum filled the air. The artifact in Isaiah's hand began to glow brighter, its pulsating light growing more intense. The soldiers instinctively took a step back, their weapons lowering slightly as they stared at the object in awe and fear. Even Harper looked unsettled, though she tried to mask it. "What's happening?" one of the soldiers muttered nervously. "It's reacting," Isaiah explained calmly. "Probably because of the aggression in the room. If you keep escalating, it might react even more strongly. And trust me, none of us want that." Ethan seized the moment. "Listen to him, Lieutenant. We don't know what this thing is capable of. Is it really worth risking lives to find out?" Harper clenched her jaw, clearly torn. On one hand, following orders meant taking control of the artifact. On the other hand, the unpredictable nature of the object and Isaiah's cryptic warnings gave her pause. After what felt like an eternity, she lowered her weapon slightly. "Fine," she said reluctantly. "But this isn't over. You're coming with me, all of you, to explain yourselves to higher command." Isaiah nodded, seemingly satisfied with the compromise. "Fair enough, but remember, Lieutenant, the artifact stays with me until then." Harper didn't argue further. With a curt gesture, she signaled for her team to lower their weapons and escort the group to a secure briefing room. As they walked, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking straight into another trap. Still, it was better than outright confrontation, for now. Once inside the briefing room, Harper wasted no time contacting General Monroe, a high-ranking officer known for his ruthless efficiency and obsession with gaining strategic advantages. Within minutes, Monroe arrived, flanked by 2 aides carrying tablets and folders. His cold, calculating gaze swept over the room, lingering longest on Isaiah and the artifact. "So this is the infamous Mr. Johnson," Monroe said, his voice dripping with skepticism. "And this trinket is causing all the fuss?" "It's not a trinket," Isaiah replied evenly. "It's a key to understanding technology far beyond human capabilities. And yes, it's dangerous, if mishandled." Monroe smirked. "Dangerous? Or not, it belongs to the military. Hand it over." Isaiah shook his head. "Not until you hear me out. If you activate this artifact improperly, it could signal the return of beings far more advanced and far less forgiving than humanity." Monroe's smirk faded, replaced by a look of irritation. "Beings? What are you talking about?" "The same ones who built the ruins in Antarctica," Isaiah explained. "They're watching us, waiting to see if we're ready to handle their technology. If we prove unworthy, they'll come back, and they won't hesitate to eliminate any threats." For a moment, the room fell silent. Monroe studied Isaiah carefully, trying to gauge whether the old man was bluffing or telling the truth. Finally, he turned to Harper. "What's your assessment of this individual?" "He claims he served in World War II, sir," Harper replied. "But there's no record of him anywhere. His story checks out in some ways, but nothing." Isaiah interrupted. "You can verify my identity later. Right now the priority is keeping the artifact safe and preventing someone like you from using it recklessly." Monroe's face darkened. "Are you accusing me of incompetence?" "I'm stating facts," Isaiah said bluntly. "Your ambition blinds you. If you activate this artifact without understanding its purpose, you'll doom us all." The tension in the room reached a breaking point. Monroe's aides shifted uncomfortably, while Harper and her soldiers exchanged uneasy glances. Ethan and Clara stood frozen, unsure of what to do next. Then unexpectedly, Clara spoke up. "Sir, perhaps we should consider Isaiah's warnings. If there's even a chance he's right, shouldn't we proceed cautiously?" Monroe turned his piercing gaze on her. "And who are you?" "A historian," Clara replied, her voice trembling, but resolute. "I've researched artifacts like this. They're tied to theories about extraterrestrial contact. Ignoring the risks could have catastrophic consequences." Monroe stared at her for a long moment before exhaling sharply. "Fine. We'll hold off, for now. But mark my words, Mr. Johnson, if you're lying to me, there will be consequences." Isaiah met his gaze unflinchingly. "Understood." With that, Monroe stormed out of the room, leaving the others in stunned silence. Harper followed shortly after, signaling for her soldiers to stand down. Once they were alone, Ethan let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "That was close," Clara whispered. "Too close," Ethan agreed. Turning to Isaiah, he added, "We need a plan. We can't stay here." Isaiah nodded. "Agreed. But escaping won't be easy. They'll be watching us closely." "We'll figure something out," Ethan said firmly. "We have to." As the 3 of them huddled together discussing their next move, the artifact continued to pulse softly in Isaiah's hand, a reminder of the immense power and danger they carried with them. The escape plan came together faster than Ethan had expected, thanks largely to Clara's quick thinking. After Monroe and Harper left the briefing room, the trio knew they had only a short window of opportunity before their movements were restricted, or worse. Clara suggested using her personal vehicle, an old but reliable truck she kept parked near the edge of the base. With the artifact safely hidden under a blanket in Isaiah's lap, they slipped out through a rarely used service gate, avoiding detection by sticking to shadows and timing their movements carefully. Now, as dawn broke over the Virginia countryside, they sped down a narrow rural road, putting as much distance between themselves and the military base as possible. Clara gripped the steering wheel tightly, her knuckles white as she glanced nervously in the rearview mirror every few seconds. Behind her, Ethan sat stiffly, his rifle resting across his knees, ready for anything. Isaiah remained calm, cradling the artifact like it was something precious and dangerous. "We can't keep running forever," Ethan said finally, breaking the tense silence. "They'll send people after us." Clara nodded grimly. "I know, but we needed to buy ourselves some time. We can't let them get their hands on this thing." Isaiah looked up from the artifact, his expression thoughtful. "She's right. Once Monroe realizes what he's dealing with, he won't stop until he has it, and when he does—" He trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air. Ethan leaned forward slightly. "So what's the next step? Where do we go from here?" Isaiah hesitated, then spoke slowly. "There's a safe house, an old cabin deep in the woods. It's isolated, hard to find unless you know where to look. We can lay low there while we figure out our next move." "Do you trust this place?" Clara asked skeptically. "What if someone finds us?" "No one knows about it except me," Isaiah assured her. "It's been decades since I've been there, but it should still be intact. If nothing else, it'll give us a chance to regroup." Ethan exchanged a glance with Clara. Neither of them liked the idea of hiding indefinitely, but they didn't have many options. For now, staying off the radar seemed like the best course of action. "All right," Ethan said. "Let's head there, but we need to stay vigilant. They'll be looking for us." Clara nodded and pressed harder on the accelerator, the truck's engine groaning as it picked up speed. As they drove, the conversation shifted to the artifact itself. Despite everything that had happened, there were still so many unanswered questions. "What exactly does it do?" Clara asked, her curiosity getting the better of her. "You mentioned it's a key, but a key to what?" Isaiah sighed, as if reluctant to explain further. "It's complicated. The artifact is designed to interface with other pieces of alien technology scattered across the globe. Together they form a network capable of manipulating fundamental forces: time, gravity, matter. Used correctly, it could revolutionize human understanding of the universe. Used incorrectly—" He paused, shaking his head. "It could destroy us." Ethan frowned. Why would anyone leave something like this here? Why not take it with them? "They didn't intend to leave it behind," Isaiah replied. "When my team entered the ruins, we disrupted something. A security measure, maybe. Whatever it was, it forced the beings who created the artifacts to retreat. They left these fragments behind, either because they couldn't retrieve them or because they wanted to test humanity's worthiness." "Test us?" Clara echoed incredulously. "Like some kind of cosmic experiment?" "In a way, yes," Isaiah admitted. "Think of it as a trial. If we prove ourselves capable of handling their technology responsibly, they may return peacefully. If not—" Again, he let the sentence trail off, leaving the grim possibility unsaid. The weight of his words settled over the group like a thick fog. Each of them processed the implications differently. For Ethan, it was a call to action, a responsibility he hadn't asked for but couldn't ignore. For Clara, it was both thrilling and terrifying, a glimpse into mysteries she'd spent her life studying. And for Isaiah, it was a burden he'd carried for decades, knowing full well the stakes involved. After nearly 2 hours of driving, Clara turned onto a dirt path barely wide enough for the truck. Trees loomed on either side, their branches intertwining overhead to form a canopy that blocked out most of the sunlight. The road twisted and turned unpredictably, making navigation difficult. Eventually, they reached a clearing where a small wooden cabin stood nestled among the trees. It looked weathered and abandoned, but structurally sound. "This is it?" Ethan asked, peering out the window. Isaiah nodded. "This is it." Clara parked the truck and killed the engine. The sudden silence was almost deafening after the long drive. One by one, they climbed out of the vehicle and approached the cabin cautiously. Isaiah retrieved the artifact from the back seat, wrapping it securely in the blanket once more. Ethan scanned the surrounding area, ensuring they were alone while Clara unlocked the door with a key Isaiah had provided. Inside, the cabin was sparsely furnished but functional. A dusty table and chairs occupied the center of the main room, flanked by a small kitchenette and a fireplace. 2 cots were pushed against one wall, likely left behind by previous occupants. Cobwebs hung from the corners and the air smelled faintly of mildew, but it was livable. Not exactly 5-star accommodations, Clara remarked dryly as she set her bag down. It'll do, Ethan said, closing the door behind them. For now anyway. Isaias placed the artifact gently on the table and began unpacking supplies from his coat, a flashlight, a pocket knife, and a small notebook filled with handwritten notes. We'll need to establish a routine, he said. Take turns keeping watch, gather food and water, and avoid drawing attention to ourselves. Ethan nodded. Agreed, but we also need to decide what to do about the artifact. Keeping it isn't a long-term solution. I know, Isaiah said, which is why we're going to neutralize it. Neutralize it? Clara repeated, alarmed. How? Isaiah opened the notebook and flipped through its pages until he found what he was looking for. Using instructions I memorized years ago. If we disable the core function, it'll render the artifact inert. No one will be able to use it. Not Monroe, not the aliens, not anyone. But won't that mean losing access to its secrets? Clara asked, disappointment evident in her voice. Yes, Isaiah confirmed. But it's the safest option. Trust me, Clara, some knowledge comes at too high a cost. Ethan stepped closer, studying the notebook. Can you walk us through it? What do we need to do? Isaiah nodded. First, we need to stabilize the energy field around the artifact, then we'll dismantle its internal components. It's delicate work, but if we follow the steps carefully, we should be able to shut it down without triggering any alarms. As Isaiah explained the process, Ethan and Clara listened intently, absorbing every detail. They knew the task ahead wouldn't be easy, but they also knew it was necessary. Whatever happened next, they were committed to seeing it through, to protecting humanity from forces it wasn't ready to face. Outside, the first rays of sunlight filtered through the trees, casting golden streaks across the forest floor. Inside the cabin, the 3 unlikely allies prepared for the challenge ahead, united by a shared sense of purpose. The artifact pulsed softly on the table, its glow growing dimmer as Isaiah began the painstaking work of dismantling it. For now, they were safe. But they all knew the real battle was just beginning. The cabin was silent except for the occasional crackle of the fire in the hearth. For hours, Ethan, Clara, and Isaiah worked tirelessly to neutralize the artifact. Isaiah guided them step by step, his hands steady despite the weight of what they were doing. Each movement was deliberate, each adjustment precise. They couldn't afford a single mistake, not when the stakes were so high. Clara held the flashlight, angling it carefully to illuminate the intricate mechanisms inside the artifact. Her brow furrowed in concentration as she followed Isaiah's instructions. Okay, next step, she said softly, glancing at the notebook. What do we do now? Isaiah pointed to a tiny component nestled deep within the device. That's the core module. We need to disconnect it without damaging the surrounding circuits. If we break those, it could destabilize the energy field. Ethan leaned closer, gripping the pliers tightly. Got it. Just tell me when. Wait, Isaiah cautioned. Take a breath first. Rushing will only make things worse. Ethan exhaled slowly, steadying himself before proceeding. With painstaking care, he reached into the artifact and gently detached the core module. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the faint blue glow that had pulsed rhythmically since they'd found the artifact began to fade. Within seconds, the light disappeared entirely, leaving the object cold and lifeless. It's done, Isaiah said quietly, his voice tinged with both relief and sorrow. The artifact is neutralized. Clara lowered the flashlight, her shoulders sagging as the tension drained from her body. Does this mean it's safe now? Completely safe? As safe as it can be, Isaiah replied. No one will be able to use it, not Monroe, not anyone. Its secrets are gone, locked away forever. Ethan set the pliers down and stepped back, staring at the now dormant artifact. I guess this is it then, all those mysteries, all that power, just gone. Clara nodded, her thoughts mirroring his own. It feels strange, doesn't it? Like we've closed a door we'll never open again. But it was the right choice, Isaiah said firmly. Some doors aren't meant to be opened. Humanity isn't ready for this kind of knowledge, not yet. For a long moment, none of them spoke. The significance of what they'd accomplished and sacrificed hung heavy in the air. By disabling the artifact, they had ensured its power wouldn't fall into the wrong hands. But they had also lost any chance of unlocking its secrets, of learning more about the beings who had created it or understanding their intentions. Finally, Ethan broke the silence. So what happens now? Do we go our separate ways? Isaiah shook his head. Not quite. There's still work to be done. Neutralizing the artifact was only part of the mission. The other part is making sure no one else stumbles upon something like this, or tries to exploit it. How do we do that? Clara asked. We spread awareness, Isaiah explained. Not about the artifact itself, but about the dangers of unchecked ambition. Governments, corporations, even individuals, they're all chasing power without considering the consequences. Someone needs to remind them that some things are better left alone. Ethan frowned. And you think we're the ones to do that? I know you are, Isaiah said simply. You've seen firsthand what's at stake. That gives you a responsibility most people don't have. Clara looked skeptical. But how do we even start? It's not like we can just walk into a room full of generals or CEOs and say, hey, stop playing with alien tech. No, Isaiah agreed. But you can influence change in smaller ways. Write reports. Share your findings with trusted allies. Raise questions that force others to think critically. Every action matters, no matter how small. Ethan exchanged a glance with Clara. Neither of them felt particularly qualified for such. A monumental task, but they couldn't deny the truth in Isaiah's words. If they didn't take a stand, who would? What about you? Ethan asked finally. What will you do now? Isaiah smiled faintly, leaning heavily on his cane. My journey ends here. I've carried this burden for decades, watching over humanity from the shadows. Now it's time for me to step aside and let others take the lead. You're leaving? Clara asked, surprised. Yes, Isaiah replied. There's nothing left for me here. Besides, the world has changed since my time. It's your turn to shape its future. Before either of them could respond, Isaiah turned toward the door. Take care of yourselves, he said over his shoulder. And remember, the choices you make today will define tomorrow. With that, he walked out of the cabin, disappearing into the forest. Ethan and Clara stood frozen for a moment, unsure of whether to follow him or let him go. But deep down, they knew Isaiah had already made up his mind. This was his way of passing the torch. Hours later, Ethan and Clara sat outside the cabin, watching the sun dip below the horizon. The sky blazed with shades of orange and pink, painting the forest in warm hues. Despite everything that had happened, there was a sense of peace in the air, a feeling that they had done the right thing, however difficult it had been. So, what now? Clara asked, breaking the comfortable silence. Ethan shrugged. We go back to our lives, back to our jobs. But we keep doing what we can, writing reports, asking questions, pushing for accountability. Maybe it won't change much right away, but every little bit helps. And Isaiah? Clara pressed. Do you think we'll ever see him again? Ethan shook his head. Probably not, but I think he'll be okay. He's been through worse than this. Clara nodded, accepting his answer. After a pause, she added, Do you think we made the right call? Disabling the artifact, I mean. Ethan thought about it for a moment before replying. Yeah, I do. It wasn't easy. But sometimes doing the right thing means letting go of something powerful, even if it hurts. They sat in silence for a while longer, enjoying the tranquility of the forest. As night fell, the stars began to appear in the sky, countless pinpricks of light scattered across the vast expanse. Looking up at them, Ethan couldn't help but wonder if somewhere out there, the beings Isaiah had described were watching, waiting to see what humanity would do next. Whatever the future held, one thing was certain. Ethan and Clara had played their part in shaping it, and though the artifact was gone, its legacy remained, a reminder of the delicate balance between progress and peril. As they packed up their belongings and prepared to leave the cabin behind, Ethan glanced at Clara and smiled. Ready to head home? She returned the smile, her eyes reflecting the starlight. Yeah, let's go. Together they walked back to the truck, leaving the forest and the artifact behind. Somewhere far above, unseen eyes continued to watch, patient and unwavering, waiting for the day when humanity would truly be ready.